Welcome back everyone. I'm going to show you how to make a homemade water resistant wax, apply it on your gear, and then also turn it into a bar. With all that being said, let's get started. Getting started with the ingredients, you'll need beeswax, and you can use beads or a bar. For this video, I'm going to be using the beads. The second ingredient is paraffin wax. The most common one to get is golf wax. You can find it at most stores, and it comes in bars. The last ingredient is boiled linseed oil or coconut oil. I'm actually going to be making two separate recipes, one with boiled linseed oil and one with coconut oil. Then I'll test them at the end and see which one works the best. If you do plan on making a bar, then you'll need a soap mold. You can get basic ones all over the internet, but I actually got a custom one made at Molds from the Ashes on Etsy. If you plan on selling these wax bars, it's just a fun little detail to add on. Moving on to the recipe, you'll need 2 cups beeswax, 1 cup paraffin wax, and a 1/4 cup boiled linseed oil or coconut oil. I'll also put the recipe in the description below. To make the wax, you'll need a heat source, and we're going to be cooking it at a very low heat, so any heat source will work. You'll also need a pot to cook it in, and you can cook it directly in the pot, but if you have good pots, then I recommend using a double boil. With your heat source turned on, add 2 cups of beeswax. Then add 1 cup of paraffin wax. If you bought golf wax, you'll only need 1 bar. Then you simply stir it at a low heat until it all liquefies. When you have it fully melted, add a 1/4 cup of boiled linseed oil or coconut oil. For this first recipe, I'll be using boiled linseed oil. Continue to stir it for 2 to 4 minutes so everything blends together. Before we transfer into the mold and make the bar, I want to first show you how to apply it, and you can either use a brush or a sponge. You'll also need a heat gun or a hair dryer, something that gives off heat to remelt the wax once it's on your fabric. I'll be applying the wax to a hat, and I found that canvas, denim, and twill all absorb the wax very well. But you can totally test different fabrics and let me know how they work. I find it easiest to coat your item while the wax is still melted because you can get a nice even coat using a brush or a sponge. Essentially, you have more control of how much wax you're using. There's a few different ways you can do this. You can either just glob it on or do very light coats. If you choose to do the light coats, then you might need to apply it a few times for the best results. After a while, the wax will start to dry on the hat and look filmy. This is totally fine. Don't worry about that because we'll be taking care of that in the next step. With my experience, the more filmy it looks, the better it resists water in the end. Once you have your item completely covered, you can either add another coat or you can move on to the next step, and that next step is applying heat. I'm using a heat gun on a higher setting, and you can see the filmy areas are starting to remelt, and those are getting absorbed back into the fabric. And you'll want to apply the heat to the entire surface area of your item. When you're done, you'll see that the filmy areas are gone because that wax got reabsorbed back into the fabric, and you're pretty much good to go. From here, you're going to let it sit for up to 24 hours. And for the remaining wax, we're going to put it in our soap mold to save it for later. It's a fairly easy process. All you have to do is set it on a flat surface and pour the liquid wax until it reaches the top of the soap mold. Just like with the hat, we're going to let it sit up to 24 hours until it hardens. If you don't have a soap mold, you can actually just leave it in the pan you cooked it in. I actually found my pans at a thrift store for super cheap, so I could just keep the wax in the pan, let it cool and harden, and then reheat it when I want to use it later. But anyways, for the moment, we can place both of these off to the side and let them cool down. And don't worry, I'll show you the final results of the bar and how to use it in later steps once it's cooled. For the second recipe, I'll be using coconut oil instead of boiled linseed oil. It's going to be made the exact same way, so I'm going to go through it fairly quick. Add 2 cups of beeswax, 1 cup of paraffin wax. If you're using golf wax, it's just 1 bar, and stir it until it's fully melted. Then add a 1/4 cup of coconut oil, stir it for 2 to 4 minutes until it's completely blended with the beeswax. Since I'll be comparing both of these recipes at the end, I also want to show you how to apply it, and it's going to be applied the exact same way. You will notice a difference with the coconut oil. It's going to turn white very quickly and create a thicker film. Again, that's totally fine. That's what we're looking for, and just glob it on or do it in light coats. The more the wax cools on your item, the thicker that film will get. But just like before, once you have your item completely covered, we're going to apply the heat using a heat gun or dryer. And remember to apply the heat to the entire surface area. Once you're finished, let it sit for up to 24 hours. While the wax is still melted, we're going to add it to the soap mold. I'm adding it the same way, and I just want to show you the comparison between both of these recipes after it's hardened. The linseed oil recipe is on the left, and the coconut oil recipe is on the right. Before you pop out the bars, make sure it's hard to the touch, and then you're going to slowly pull it out of the mold so you don't crack it. If you let it sit for up to 24 hours, you should be good to go, and it almost just falls right out of the mold. If for some reason it still feels soft, then you're going to want to let it sit a little longer. Next, I'm going to show you how to apply the wax to your item just using the bar. And this is a common way to do it. You just scrape it onto your item in even coats, covering the entire surface area. Apply heat using a heat gun or hair dryer and you'll see that wax start to melt into the fabric. This technique does take a little bit longer, but it still yields great results. It's also good if you're trying to get precise areas on a garment, because with the melted version, it kind of gets everywhere, so this bar is a nice way to dial in the accuracy. Next, we're going to take a quick look at the boiled linseed oil and the coconut oil hats after letting them sit for 24 hours. I will say the boiled linseed oil does penetrate the fabric a little bit better than the coconut oil, so that will result in a more water resistant item, but the biggest thing with the boiled linseed oil is that it smells a little bit worse than the coconut oil. If you smelled boiled linseed oil before, you'll know what I'm talking about. It has kind of like a turpentine or a different smell to it, and you're going to get that smell in your item. So if you're going to be waxing a hat like I did, I do recommend going the coconut oil route. Moving on to the testing, I'm going to first test the boiled linseed oiled hat. I'm simply just dumping water on top and seeing what happens. And remember, this is only after one coat. The water is repelling off the crown super good. It's kind of getting stuck on the brim, but I think that's due to the stitches. But overall, it's not absorbing into the fabric, and that's the biggest thing we're looking for. Like I said, the more coats you do, the more resistant the fabric is going to get. Next, we're going to test the coconut oil hat, and again, it's bouncing off the crown super well and kind of getting locked up on the brim. It's not absorbing into the fabric just yet, but I could see over time, the water, if it sits there, it might start to absorb into the seams. This is also only one coat, so if you do use the coconut oil, I recommend doing more than one coat. But overall, both of these recipes worked very well. They resisted the water, and they also make the hat look really nice. The biggest thing I noticed is that with the coconut oil, you're going to have to use the heat gun quite a few times to really get it to absorb into the fabric, whereas the linseed oil, it kind of just absorbs in after the first go of the heat gun. So if you're not concerned about the smell, I definitely recommend going the boiled linseed oil route, but if you don't like that smell, then you're going to want to go the coconut oil route and add more applications. So in conclusion, I'm going to probably say the coconut oil does win just because you don't have the smell, and it's more natural going that route if you're using it on hats or anything you're going to put on your body. So in the end, if you tried both of the recipes, definitely let me know which one you like the best. And that's going to do it for the water resistant wax. When it comes down to comparing these two, the main difference is going to be the smell and what you're using it for. So for example, if you're using it for a hat, I would recommend going the coconut oil route. It's a little bit more natural and it's probably going to be better in the long run when it's sitting on your head. You're also not going to get the smell of the boiled linseed oil, which is the biggest turn down for that recipe. But if you're putting it on gear like a bag or something else that's not going to be totally on your body at all times, then I would highly recommend going the boiled linseed route. So it really comes down to what you're going to be putting it on. The other thing I'd like to point out is the amount of applications. If you really want to get it to that next water resistant level, then it's going to be best to do a few applications. And you're going to apply it the same way each time, either heating it up and applying it with the brush or using the bar. Both techniques, you're really going to want to glob it on and use a heat gun to get it into the fiber. Also over time, if you notice that the wax is getting filmy looking or looking a little bit cracked or faded, all you have to do is take the heat gun, reapply the heat, and it's going to absorb back into the fabric. But anyways, hopefully you found this video helpful. I'm going to keep the videos coming at you, so I'll see you next time.